Okay, I think we're almost set. Uh, Sagar joins in a minute, and I think we can start. Okay, I think, yeah, it's cross state. I think we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth LinkedIn Live series of Fractal. I'm Tanay, a senior consultant with Fractal Dimension, and we're trying to solve, some of the client's toughest problems using a very interdisciplinary approach, combining skill sets of AI, engineering, design, behavioral sciences, and so on. And today we have like a superb topical conversation on digital transformation, the decision of buy versus build, so BVB framework for Fortune companies. So there's a solid team on this call. Let me just quickly introduce. We have Saurabh. He's the global consulting leader for CPG based out of Chicago. He's worked extensively over 15 plus years in data and analytics space across functions with Fortune 100 companies to participate and enable them in the journey for their digital transformation. We've also got Ravi. He's a delivery head
Hey everyone.
uh, for one of the largest CPG accounts of ours, and he oversees multiple digital transformation programs in Asia, Middle East, Africa, Europe, and his expertise lies in helping organizations articulate and realize that AI vision to deliver value and growth. We've also got Vishrant. He's a senior data science consultant with over 9 years of experience in CPG, retail, e-commerce, consumer healthcare. He's consulted, led, and delivered numerous analytics programs again for Fortune 100 clients, largely around RTM, route to market, sales analytics. His expertise lies in building scalable analytics platforms and products for the sales org, mostly. He's currently helping global clients navigate through that new digital transformation experience era, creating long term value and growth through advanced analytics. A quick thing about me also, like I said, senior retail consulting expert, have partnered with several Fortune 100s across their sales execution, supply chain, customized marketing, and FP&A functions. Helped them define and articulate the analytics vision and led and delivered multiple programs and solutions in these areas. I think I'll just quickly hand over to Ravi to share our POV on the whole buy versus build decision and framework and how to approach it, and then we can open up the conversation to this panel of experts and then the audience Q&A also. So keep sending your questions on the chat as we speak. Ravi, floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanay. Let's wait. Let's wait for the presentation to open up.
Sure, I think you should.
Everyone.
All right. So while we wait for that, let's actually set the ball rolling. So we all understand that buy versus build have always been a hard choice for a lot of for almost from the beginning of time. But I think over the last few years, as and when we saw the applications of practical AI and ML coming into the fore, we've seen business models getting disrupted. We've seen digital strategies getting disrupted, and consequently, we've also seen that the way people are thinking about solutions has changed significantly. Let's take, for example, let's take a pet food manufacturer. So up until very recently, the company was just a pet food manufacturer, but now they're reinventing themselves as a pet ecosystem, where they are able to link pet food, not just pet food, but pet experiences. And throughout the life stage of the entire pet, the owner gets everything that the person needs to essentially take care of the pet, ensure that it has a happy, fulfilling life. Just think about that for a minute. Essentially, we have, thanks to practical and AI and ML, we are able to figure out and we are able to solve problems that we've not seen before, and that creates opportunities as well as problems. Opportunities like you're able to look at new business avenues, greener pastures that have until now been uh, non-existent for you, and problems because the implementation challenges that come with it are actually uh, you know causing hindrances for many of these business strategies to actually succeed. Having said that, I think over the last few years, what we've seen is that it has become increasingly harder to make decisions or make sense of market demand, and consequently, what we've seen is that siloed problem solving has kind of lost its luster altogether. And we've been hearing this for some time now. It has become sort of like a textbook thing for B schools. But ideally, what we've seen is that uh, siloed problem solving has completely gone away. There are no longer any cookie cutter solutions or silver bullet solutions out there. And just like we don't have any cookie cutter or silver bullet solutions, we don't even have any silver bullet answers to the choices we can make in order to be able to build those solutions that are bespoke to our particular problems. And the at the core of all of this is that the problems have become a lot more interconnected. Therefore, solutions have also become interconnected. Good news is that the market has responded with a plethora of technologies and capabilities, but again, the challenge here is that uh, none of these products or technologies are able to fulfill or are able to solve the problem in its entirety. Therefore, what we are seeing is that the architects and the CIOs of organizations are constantly uh, under a situation wherein they will have to reinvent their architecture and reinvent their solutions approach. And in this due course, I think the biggest constraint that we are seeing to the entire thing is again going back to buy versus build. And the challenge right now is that we have more choices, but problem definitions have become really hazy. Retail and CPG, thanks to DTC, the entire uh, clear marks of delineations have completely gone away. And because of that, again, the solutions have become wide open. And that's where, over the last few years, when we talk to our customers, we've seen that there are about six broad dimensions in which you can think about this, put a structure to it, and solve it. And we just want to present that today to you. This is at this point in time a wide open discussion, uh, and a lot of this, when we have to realize that for individual organizations, will be dependent on what is your current state, what are your investments, what are your leverages right now, and where do you want to go, and what is your organization culture. Are you in a position to make that change? Are you able to leapfrog and do disruptive things? Does your culture allow you to do that? That's where we are at this point in time, right? So before, without any further ado, let's just actually go to the framework and see what the framework is. um, uh, could someone tell me if the framework is on the screen? Tanay?
It's not there, Ravi. Give us
All
just
right,
a second.
sure,
Uh, I think there is some issue with the platform.
sure. So with that context set, okay, okay. Should I continue? All right. So with that context set, let's actually quickly revisit or visit what the six dimensions are. And before we go ahead any further, right? Let's just look at what the sorry.
I think there is some echo
Yeah.
because and whoever is sharing, can you please share the presentation mode?
So sorry about that. It's so while we figure out how to present our screen, let's actually talk about what the six dimensions are. Uh, they are visibility, impact, risk, scale, cost, and time. Now, cost and time are very common. A lot of organizations still take their decisions based on cost and time, and we strongly feel that it's a very important, tangible, good metric to look at. However, cost and time should not be a discerning factors at the beginning. So if you were to sort of like a build a decision tree, they should be at the very end, wherein you are able to eliminate progressively all the dissimilarities, and you are able to get a finite set of choices. That is when I think we should go ahead and compare two solutions on cost and time. Now, let's quickly look at each of these dimensions and then we'll go into the details of it. First one is obviously visibility, which is not just about the whether or not you understand the problem. It's also more about whether or not do you understand the trajectory that the problem is going to take. Do you know the and do you know and appreciate the evolution of the problem itself? In the sense that, let's say, for example, if you start something with as simple as sales driver analysis or demand forecasting, uh, do you know what shape is this, sort of like a shell that you're creating, going to take in the future? Is it going to continue to be, is it going to be more applicable to supply chain, or is it going to be more applicable to your route to market, which wherein you can actually suggest what your customer should actually buy from you? So that's the sort of visibility we are talking about. It's not so much about do I have my requirements at this point in time. It's not about that. Second is impact. When we're talking about impact, we're not talking about ROI. We're talking about whether or not a solution, two things actually. One is, where is the solution helping you and how is it helping, and what is the unique value the solution is bringing to the table. Essentially, is the solution you're going to build, is it going to solve a problem that is so elemental and intrinsic to you, or is it going to be something that is more or less like a good to have for you, but not your core competence, right? So that's one thing you need to look at. So generally what we've seen is that companies try to build their core competencies, build solutions around their core competencies, and buy things that are a little on the fringe to them. And second thing is, what unique capability it can bring you. Does it give you, or does the solution have a sort of like a non-replicable unique capability? Case in point is, of course, if you are talking about something like warehouse network distribution, or the entire logistics network, or orchestration, there are a few brands right now in the market, and there are a few you know uh, service providers who can actually build something like this. And when they build it, the products stay performant, right? So when you have a unique capability and when it fits in well with your priorities, that is the impact that you should look at, right? And third is more about risk. And when we are talking about risk, we are talking about, does it expose you to any solvency or visionary conflicts that you may get from your suppliers? So if you are going to implement something, let's say in let's say, for a lack of better example, route to market again. There are a few vendors out there who provide specific pieces of route to market, but they're not extensible, and they're not very harmonious with other providers, and they're not, the company does not have the vision to provide, you know advanced route to market capabilities. Route to market right now has, I mean, it's given that image recognition, capture, planogram compliance have become sort of like the bread and butter of route to market these days. So when you choose a product, especially when you try to buy one, uh, essentially, um think of, is it going to expose me to the risks that are due to the service provider's ability or willingness to serve me? Fourth one is, should you choose to, um, I think we're still on impact. If you could go to the next slide. Should you choose to actually go ahead and build it, one of the biggest considerations you should be thinking about is skill, right? When we're talking about skill, we're talking about, do we have the capabilities, the hard capabilities, like, do we understand the problem really well, and do we have what it takes to build a solution? And the software capabilities around, do we have what it takes to enforce the solution, or let's say get the solution adopted by the consumers, end consumers within our organization, and do we have the culture to actually implement it? That is skill. Once we have that, time and cost are pretty self-explanatory. You can take any number of costs, it would never be enough, but total cost of ownership is one simple metric you can look at. And it could take anything from building, implementation, continuous improvement, continuous development, support, program change management, licensing, and infrastructure. These are all the costs you can think of when you're thinking about total cost of ownership. And the last one, but definitely not the least, is time to market. What so Time to market sometimes becomes extremely important because uh, most of business strategies are hinged on you being first on the block, and at least you being one of the first on the block with a very good product or a very good capability. And in such cases, time to market will have to be looked at in terms of how complete is the solution and how fast the solution can be implemented. But again, it's just a matter of which will allow me to get there faster in a more with a more critical mass. So these are the 6 dimensions. um, Now let's just look at how we can put them in practice. And of course, this is a very generalized decision tree. This again will have to be optimized and tailored to suit your organizational needs. We can, when we are thinking about this decision tree, again, you start with the first question, which is, do you have, I mean, first of all, are you sure about the problem? Second is about the visibility again. Do you have a commercially available off the shelf product to buy? If no, then your obvious choice is build. You're sorted. The principle under which this decision tree works is progressive elimination of dissimilarities. So ultimately, you have a finite set of like choices, or a finite set of unique or finite set of similar choices from which you can pick based on just cost and time. That's how you should think about this decision tree. And you have visibility. Once you know that you have an off the shelf product, then you got to think of the impact. Is it going to be something, is it going to give us a distinct competitive advantage, or is it going to solve a very critical business problem to us, or is it going to be more foundational? That choice is completely up to you and the culture that you have. But the recommendation would be something foundational stays with you, something at the fringe you can go ahead and purchase. Last would also be within visibility or within impact. Does it provide any non-replicable, unique capability? If you are targeting something like, say, if you're a CPG company and you're looking at understanding consumer sentiment about your products, would you rather, you know, essentially get all the tweets, get all the Facebook messages, and analyze them yourself, build an NLP model, and build a classifier yourself, or would you essentially go ahead and buy this data from somebody else? That's entirely up to you. But again, it entirely depends. Sometimes the solution is very nuanced, or the problem is very nuanced about looking at a phrase and figuring out if your solution meets that, right? So again, it is entirely up to the context under which it lies. It needs to be thought through, tailored to your need. Next would be risk. It's very straightforward. The last one again would essentially be skill, which is whether or not you have the right kind of skill sets, the right kind of culture, and the program management skill sets to basically, do you have the chops to get it done? And once you have all of this, then it's only a matter of cost and time. Uh, that's about it essentially. Any questions? All right. So Tanay, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure, I think I was on mute. Thanks, Ravi. That was great. That's a lot of perspective, and once you identify, I think those 6 crucial dimensions or parameters, that or the key considerations, so to speak, that makes it a lot more straightforward. You at least have a good starting point. I just want to bring in, the panelists as well, and Saurabh, unmute yourself, and then we'll just take a quick question for you, and wanted to understand, given that there's so much platform and capability enablement from various cloud providing accelerators, digital accelerators for large organizations, it has become easier and more intuitive to build products using native functionality. In this light, what trends do you see evolving in terms of buy versus build decisions?
Thank you, Tanay, for that question. I think just before I move into that point, a way or a better way to look at a buy versus build decision tree from an organization standpoint is it's not straightforward implementation of what we have shared here. Just think about it in context of and in context of what type of problems you are trying to solve within the company. And then there is a methodology that we apply over it, which this team does, is to customize this decision tree based on the problem that you're trying to solve, so that you can take more appropriate and accurate decision from a strategy standpoint from long term. Now, coming to the question, I think there are various trends, as all of you understand. Large organization, and this is specifically in perspective of large organization, for some of the Fortune 500 companies that we work with. There is an increasing affinity which has been accelerated because of COVID as well, to invest a lot into cloud-based application, um, invest a lot into accelerating the digital transformation journey. And when that happens, what essentially is happening is there is a lot of infrastructure and platforms that are created wherein they are ingesting data, wherein different type of application are going to reside completely on the cloud platform. And within that context, um, it is it is important to for them to look at what value am I driving from the native functionality of the platform that I'm investing in, versus where I'm going to buy something that is off the shelf. So one trend that we have seen recently is that most of the organization, as they invest into digital capabilities, have started building product teams. And what product teams do is to manage these, not only the buy and build decisions, but also manage the product lifecycle and applications that they are building within their company in a traditional, as you would see in a traditional product organization, which includes the platforms, the functionalities, the roadmap, and the strategic way of implementing them into geographies. And these teams have started working in, as most of you would have heard, agile product development ways, in order to develop and deliver. So that has been one of the trends, and these organizations therefore are on journey of building their own product ecosystem. Now, once this product ecosystem is set up, the affinity is more to use native functionalities for the problems that can be built internally, and therefore it has to be clearly understood how this buy and build decision can be based out of that. The second is the once these, and this is specifically for the build. Traditionally, the enhancement part, or building more and more functionality on top of it, or evolving it, was difficult, and there was a lot of focus for a company that is providing an off-the-shelf product to build that. But now, these enhancement, um, including the skill set to manage and maintain these enhancement, or to build the product roadmap, is not very it's not a complex process, because I mean it's massive, but it's not complex in terms of very specialized areas that are needed, because these cloud platforms do provide enormous amount of functionalities to build something like computer vision. For example, you have many different libraries and process flows that are inbuilt into the native application. Let's take Google for example, and then you can use that, and you can build a computer vision type of capability within your ecosystem. The third element that organizations are looking at is strategic, right? If the capability is strategic, then why do I need to depend upon someone else in order to manage and maintain it? And therefore, isn't it important for me to build this capability in-house? And that's also a perspective of product teams that they are thinking about and building it. So this is more from a buy perspective. Now, when I moved to product or a service application, um, what is more relevant, and what the way that decisions are being looked at, is, are there products in the industry that are very, very differentiating, who have solved a problem which is um, a very focused problem many, many times again and again. And if that is the problem that they are solving, then isn't it much easier to get something off the shelf and implement it versus thinking about um, the building something from scratch, right? And therefore, I think that's the perspective that even the product companies or the service platform providers should think about. That, have I solved a very focused problem many times? So, and that is the differentiating factor for me to go with to go back and kind of build that. And another element is cost to support. If the product cost to support is just minimal versus someone internally managing it, then that definitely goes into the into the buy decision off the shelf versus a build decision, right? So these are some of the consideration into the buy process versus build process and how industries are thinking around it. Tanay, I hope I was able to answer that question.
No, certainly. Thanks for that, Saurav. And I think that's why it is such a complex, space to navigate. And I think maybe we can, before we move to Vishant, I had some questions for you too. But before that, perhaps, just we'll take the first audience question. And, someone, I think Manish in the chat had asked about, when you think about trading versus manufacturing implications, what are our views? And at this point, I'll just bring in Sagar, client partner with Fractal. We've got him on the call too. So, Sagar, do you have a view on this?
Absolutely. Firstly, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Um, so this is a very deep question, Manish. Thanks for asking. And in the buy versus build arena, right, this is right up there. So brings up a few examples in mind, right? Companies like Unilever, P&G, Colgate, who are manufacturing products as well as distributing them, marketing them, and so on, right? They also, in terms of outsourcing, they do consider distribution networks in most cases across the world, across 80 to 100 countries, right? And these companies have built so deep supply lines, retailer relationships since 100, 200, in some cases 220 to 30 years as well, right? So they have very deep relationships, and that's why this model is able to work. However, the newer players, they are trying to disintermediate and also in some cases take over only the portions where they can actually control the brand experience, the consumer experience, the retailer experience, and so on, right? So you might want to take control of many experiences. However, in certain situations, you might want to outsource. So, for example, the best example I could think of is Coca-Cola, right? Who still manages the original recipe of what goes in as the ingredient of the beverages, and it's a super secretive ingredient, right? Nobody knows what's that in the sugar water. Why is it so addictive, right? Nobody knows. However, does Coca-Cola manufacture it itself? No. It has partner companies, which are itself behemoths, right? Hellenic, for example, is one of our clients, and it's a 10, $11 billion company. And there are 12, I think 12 or 13 such partner companies of Coca-Cola who actually manufacture and supply these products to retailers, to consumers, to malls, airports, etc. And they don't market, they don't have the recipe, but Coca-Cola parent company does. So very nicely the ecosystem of Coca-Cola is working, right? Where they have built their own marketing teams, but they have um, outsourced or have partnered with other companies to sell or to distribute, manufacture and distribute products, right? So it's a balance, and it depends on the business model you're in. How deep are you involved, and how wide do you want to go in your expenditure, the risk that you're taking across working capital, right? If you want to really establish 80 factories in 80 countries, right? It does require a lot of risk. That's from a business model perspective. If you talk of just analytics, right, which is a much smaller piece of the puzzle, then I think it's a much more easier decision compared to this. And Ravi did explain it in a lot of detail. How do we take that decision? We're also trying to make a live simulator on Fractal website so that anybody can actually put in their question and answers, and then you get a right answer to what you should be doing. It's still some time away, still figuring it out, but the white paper is online. I hope that helped, Manish, and welcome others to chime in as well.
Thanks, Sagar. Yeah, I think that live simulator is much awaited. That would be really fantastic. The most plug and play that I can think of in this space. But like you mentioned, I think there are so many challenges. It seems like there's so many mines that are just waiting for you to, put your foot into it. And perhaps on that note, Vishant, I think want to bring you in here. And in terms of the decision maker, the CIO or the chief solution architect or whoever it might be, what do you think are the most common pitfalls that they tend to fall into in terms of this buy versus build decision?
I'm just checking if I'm audible.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
are.
okay, great. So thanks for the question, Tanay. I think there are several, but just wanted to point out a few. So I think to start off with our thinking around, one size fits all approach, right? So we know that today a lift and shift doesn't really work always. You need to kind of create a base model and kind of customize on top of your base model for your meeting your local needs, right? So the customization part is very critical. If I were to think of when you kind of choose a partner or something buy off the shelf, right? So deployment for a particular solution, say in a European market, would be very different versus what you would deploy for a CR market, right? In terms of the same business problem that you're solving for. For example, when we worked with one of our Russian clients, we specifically brought in case studies of deployment in their sales transformation journeys, their thought leadership and language capabilities from the Russian markets. So that was very critical for them in terms of choosing a partner. So bottom line is, while choosing a partner or while building a co-creating a solution with your partner or buying something off the shelf, we need to check for possibilities of customizing the solution per the local market needs. The second one, in terms of a common pitfall, is the intention of really replacing entirely the current platform or the architecture. So something that partner ecosystem needs to introspect is the intention in order to enhance the current analytics or the tech platform instead of replacing it, right? The ecosystem should really bring in and should be kind of extensible to the current legacy system, right? For example, when we deployed our SKU recommender solutions on client systems, the idea was to integrate the outputs of that solution, which is the recommendation at a store SKU level, what should be the right order quantity, what should be the assortment size, so on and so forth. And that had to be integrated with their SFA applications or their handheld devices. And in order to do that, we actually partnered with their tech teams and customized the front-end designs of the SFA app, right? To really bring out the power of the true power of the solution. So as much as possible, the idea is to not redesign anything from scratch or replace the current system, but to kind of enhance that ecosystem. Right. The third common pitfall, again, I just wanted to highlight as well, is not really looking at adjacent problem statements. So quite often you actually end up looking at a very narrow way of solving the problem, right? So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, am I looking at the problem holistically, seeing through the interconnectedness among the different business questions that we are looking to solve for? Does the partner have the ability to kind of solve the problem holistically? Because in this VUCA world, problem statements are constantly evolving, right? So when we engaged with one of our clients to solve for a specific problem where they wanted to reduce the cost to serve in a particular channel, they asked us to optimize for their current routes that the sales reps were taking. And when we took a step back and we did a discovery and immersion with the client, we understood that there is a lot more than meets the eye, right? So beyond route optimization, there was a need also to optimize for their call plan, for their detailing time, the whole territory design itself, and the coming up with the optimal number of sales force to serve the entire coverage plan. So the key question being, does your partner or the product that you're intending to buy off the shelf, do they have the capability to solve even the adjacent problem statements, right? Or if they have the flexibility to kind of solve for that problem and maneuver through by having that capability to solve the entire problem at its core. So that's something that we should also ask ourselves before we kind of engage in any kind of a buy versus build decision.
No, super, Vish. I think, yeah, I think those three, pitfalls or problems captured it quite well. And I was just, thinking about some of the ways we overcome that, and just thinking in terms of, trends and, intelligent or innovative approaches that, folks have taken to, if not, reach that buy or build decision, but at least take a more informed decision, when they finally do. And just thinking of trends in terms of the industry. Actually, when I hear the word trends, the first thing I think of is recently in a digital transformation and kind of a discussion. I think there was this question about with all of these new positions coming up in the last maybe 10 years, new designations, then who has probably pushed the envelope or accelerated digital adoption and this buy versus build and capability building the most? Is the COO traditionally, or is the CIO, the CDO, digital officer, or the CTO? And I think more than anything else, it's COVID. The pandemic has actually been the biggest nudge, or the biggest mother of all trends, and that's actually been the biggest nudge towards this digital acceleration. But on a more serious note, I think there are tons of intelligent ideas and approaches that companies have taken to make a more informed choice. And I just wanted to quickly touch upon three themes. One is evaluating the solution, but also the fitment. It's almost like hiring an employee, right? You want to see that they've got their core skills in place, but you also want to see the cultural fit and how they're going to play out at your company. So evaluating solution and fitment. The next is, I think, very popular and very topical. It's a building at the speed of buy. So build at the speed of buy is something that has come to the light in recent times, and the economics of development has changed so much because of some of the newer platforms that have come in. So that's something I want to discuss too. And the third is probably I'm going to call it hybrid and out of the box ideas, because some of them are actually out of the box. It's not build or buy. It's almost like enable and then sit back with your popcorn and watch the fun, right? So the first one, in terms of evaluating the solution and the fitment, these off-the-shelf vanilla kind of products, they're not working too much these days. They require a high amount of customization, and so some very innovative ways that companies have, some CPGs, they have. There's one CPG, one of our clients, that have created almost like a Kaggle-like environment where they release problem statements, to the public, and it's open to all, and they release live problems that they're actually facing in a slightly different manner, and they invite solutions. And what this of course it covers for the fact that they're going to give tons of innovative solutions from vendors and boutique products and boutique product offerings and so many others. So they're definitely going to get very innovative and a diverse set of solutions. They're also going to get very competitive pricing, obviously, because the supply of vendors and products is available. But apart from that, they're also going to get fitment and almost integration kind of evaluation. That's something that they can also conduct, because all of these solutions are tailor made for that business problem which they have asked for. So it's almost like a smart RFP, if I can call it, smart free RFP or something like that. And in certain cases, some of these product companies are even okay not to get paid for this solution, but simply just take the CPG's logo and put it on their product or website. So I mean, it's really the best of. It's really, I mean, if you think about eating the cake and having it too, this is it, right? Another, when I come to the second point in terms of build at the speed of buy, and this is most of the products that are directly touching customers. You want to build them, or you want to have a very high sense of control. And I think modern app development and the cloud platforms have matured so much, and they cover everything basically, right from ideating to operating, and these low code, no code platforms, they have slashed development time significantly. And earlier, you think about them that okay, they're fine for point solutions, just a specific problem. But now very quickly, organizations are daring to dream in terms of creating these low code, no code, and having this development done, and you can actually create quick cheap, adaptable enterprise solutions also, So that is another point. You think of OutSystems, or you think of ZeroGons that Fractal recently acquired as well, And I think the third is in terms of, the hybrid model or the out of the box. When you think of hybrid, I think about how at least in the banking industry, I think about how there have been large banks that have acquired. There are obviously tons, plethora of fintechs that have come into play with different, digital banking skill sets and offerings. And there have actually been cases where large banks have not acquired, but just acquired a stake in that fintech. And once you do that, that's really accelerating. That's almost like building at the speed of buy. It really makes it a lot quicker, because now once they've got a stake, they know that the offering from the fintech is going to be tailored a lot more towards their requirement. The integration is much faster, and they're therefore able to get digital offerings a lot quicker. Capabilities in terms of faster payments, etc., etc. They are able to do that a lot quicker. And perhaps the last one in terms of out of the box, this is not build or buy, but if you think about how Salesforce, they created like a marketplace or a Play Store kind of environment, with App Exchange and with Apex and, force.com and all of that, where, third parties can come and deploy their apps, and that is useful for the community at large, the Salesforce user community. And they didn't build it, they didn't buy any of these companies, but they created a platform where not only is all the supply in terms of tons of products and apps that are being created, but that also takes care of the demand in a way, because it's demand sensing. Only the apps that are really required are going to make it to the eventual Play Store environment for Salesforce, and will be used a lot, right? So I mean, this is a very out of the box kind of innovative solution just to throw in there. And now I think I'm done with some of these ideas. I think, Sagar, we have another question on the panel, and I just wanted to ask about this. One is from Parag. When we talk about hierarchical implementation, what is that's not the one, is it? Sagar, I think we had one. Hierarchical implementation. What is the success rate at the end result in Fortune 100, and also the time it takes to get to the output? Sagar, do you have a view on that?
Sure. You can quickly jump in. I know we are almost at the
Yeah,
end.
no, really, yeah.
So yeah, definitely we have been working with many companies, and things have changed as well. Top-down implementations with top-down sponsorships, as well as bottoms-up in-market blueprinting, right? To start with, from in-market MVPs to global programs. There are various approaches. We believe most successful companies do implement top-down plus bottoms-up, and they also have sideways case studies, publicization, socialization, challenger models, and so on, where there are employees who are actually taking 90-day challenges and to prove whether a product is worth, being used. What are the enhancement backlog creation going on? I think Saurabh touched upon this a little while ago. And then also, in a product mindset, you want to ensure that user is at the center. What are the decision journeys that the users or your end customers are going through? And the customers can be a retailer, can be a consumer, can be your sales team, supply chain team, whoever, right? That's your audience. So unless you're satisfying their pain points and really fixing the gaps that they are feeling, either digital transformation or something else, you won't be successful really. And that's what we have been observing. The other topic that's coming up is adoption versus change management, right? What is the right approach? So should we roll out a product and then talk 6 months change management, or should we say day zero, let's start adoption thinking, which means user at the center, products, what are the user stories, opportunities, insights, what is the value measurement technique that you're using? Can you show up that value every few days? Can you measure daily active users and so on, right? Instead of saying, I'll build a product, roll it out, and 6 months later I'll start training the people and changing their behavior to suit my needs. That's really not what's going to work anymore. We all know empowered employees exist in the world today. We all have information at our fingertips. Digital apps are working. Organizational cultures have changed. The Gen Zs, Gen Ys, millennials, they're not going to follow just because you say so, right? So Things have changed, and there's a lot to be discussed on this topic itself. Maybe we'll have one separate LinkedIn session on this adoption topic itself. How do we ensure value measurement, right? And I know we can talk a lot, but I'm being nudged that we are on time. So I want to quickly thank all the panelists on this call. Vishrant, Ravi, Saurabh, Tanay, thank you so much for joining in and sharing your perspectives on this complex topic. And also, the white paper is up on the Fractal website. You can just go there, fractal.ai, search for buy versus build, you get it there. And a lot more white papers are also getting uploaded as we speak on various topics related to buy versus build and digital transformation. So urge all of you to really take advantage of that. And also we will continue this LinkedIn live series. This is the fourth in the series of LinkedIn live with the Fractal Dimension team. We'll continue this every month. So hopefully before the next Children's Day, we'll have one more on an exciting topic. So yeah, looking forward to all the participation, and we love questions from all of you,
There was
Parag, Manish, everyone else. All right, so Saurabh, you wanted to say something else?
On Children's Day, we can talk about create
no,
or
I think
adopt.
there was some disruption, but thank you for the closing comments, Sagar. Very interesting topic, and I think we should spend a little bit more time over a period of time, coming months on this topic again. Once we finalize some of the framework or do a live session on on the simulator itself.
Absolutely. I think we absolutely will do it, and we'll bring this team again on this call. So thank you again. This video will be available as well to all of you with a separate link. And I know there's a long weekend coming up in India, so happy Dasara, happy Durga Puja, and enjoy the long weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.